It's the Paradise Podcast.
I am your host, Ryan Michelle Bethay, with my husband, Sterling.
What's up?
Join us here on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus, where we'll discuss each episode with the cast and crew of Paradise. I'll be getting all the secrets from Dan Fogelman, James Marsden, Shailene Woodley, Julianne Nicholson, and Sterling Kelby Brown. Woo! Paradise, the official podcast, is now streaming.
And stream Paradise on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus.
I have been stressing this, that people need to be investing in rare earth minerals and uranium. I'm also going to talk about personal branding. Enjoy! Welcome to the Age of Jeremy. My name is Jeremy Quintanilla. This is a show about my business adventures and side quests. You might remember me from such businesses as 3T Warrior Academy, Merlin, the smartest way to track your crypto, Q Financial, Age of Radio, just to name a few. And I'm super excited about the content that we're going to talk about today, because I'm going to talk about things that are near and dear to my heart, such as personal branding, and things that I kind of forgot about as I've been spending so much time working that I'm trying to get better on now. But before I jump into that, I do want to talk a little bit about the uranium war that we're in right now with Iran. And it's Iran, not Iran. I think that if we're going to, destroy an entire country, we should know how to at least fucking say it. Just my thought, I guess. But that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Iran as it relates to uranium. And I'm going to talk about why we need to start thinking about rare earth minerals and uranium as it relates to our investments. I'm also going to talk a little bit about personal branding today, my personal branding, and the things that I kind of want to change about myself. But before I get into those, I want to remind you that I have another show. It's called The Mercury. It's a podcasting and pop culture news show. It's a live streaming show that comes out every Friday at 3:30 p.m., except for when we do live events or I can't make it, in which case we will have some of our co-hosts, such as Trey and Jinx and Thermo, do it, which I was really excited about that they were able to help with one of the episodes when I was doing our Freedom Conference. But you can go to YouTube, go to Mercury by Age of Radio, and there is my beautiful face live streaming about pop culture and podcasting news, something that is near and dear to my heart as I continue to build Age of Radio, the podcast network for everyone, which we might be changing some of that up, because Age of Radio is more than just a podcast network. It's a media company. Just one of the services that we provide is for podcasting. You can check that out at ageofradio.com. We have brand new shows that are coming on. There's MMS Inspirational. There's the Come Up Method podcast. We're going to be adding a new religious show called The Guard to the Trust, I think is what it's called. And it looks at like social situations from the Bible perspective. And again, while I'm not specifically a Christian and I have my own opinions on it, as long as people aren't going out there and spitting like complete hate speech, even if they are, right leaning or left leaning, doesn't matter. I'll let them onto the podcast network. I believe that that's freedom of speech. And I believe that the thing that we can do, whether it is propaganda that's not inciting violence, that could be considered hate speech, I guess, but it's not exactly like go and kill these people for, their sex or their religion or their gender or their race. I will let people talk about it, because I think that we need to have more of these conversations and we need to be more open to these things, and people need to get their fucking feelings hurt. And I think that one of the ways to do that is to have open and free speech. Just, we need to have more etiquette and manners in the way in which we talk about things. And that's some of the things that I'm going to be talking about today as well when I talk about the personal branding. But head on over to YouTube, go to Mercury by Age of Radio and check that out. You can also follow me at Age of Jeremy so you can keep up with all the cool stuff that I have going on with all of my businesses. Again, these are my business adventures and side quests. I'm really excited because we've been focusing on Q Financial and Freedom Insurance, and I'm going to be at a conference this week for a nationwide conference. I think it's a nationwide sponsored conference. I'm going to be going there tomorrow, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I've decided to wear to that, and kind of thinking about how to take things to the next level as it relates to professionalism and finance, and some of the things that I'm trying to do internally. And by internally, I mean in my business internally, to really grow it and kind of continuing to find myself, which a little bit of that goes into the authentic piece of why I think we're going to see more and more people go to being authentic. But I do find that there's a problem with that in some areas. And I'm just going to share my thoughts on that as the way that I see it, and where we also need to, I think that we can still care about other people's feelings with still having a conversation and share with them what we want to share with them. And then people on the flip side need to understand that they shouldn't be driven by their emotions and their feelings about certain situations, whether those people are, related to them, whether those people are working for them, whether those people, believe in them, whether they hate those people, whatever the case is. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today as well. Also, on March 20th, we're going to be launching our Wealth Podcast show on the 3T Warrior Academy YouTube channel. So make sure that you check that out. It's going to be a show with May, with CJV, with myself, with Jackie, with Mario, with Gonzo, with Johnny. And it's going to be a show where we sit down and talk about, everything that's going on in the financial markets. Maybe not financial markets, anything that we want to talk about as it relates to us continuing to build and create generational wealth and educate people on generational wealth. So make sure that you check that out as well. The last thing that I want to say, and then we'll talk a little bit about uranium and the Iranian war. And that is, if you are in the Phoenix metropolitan area and you're listening to this, head on over to Game On Expo in Phoenix Convention Center. It's on March 14th, 15th, and 16th. There's going to be all kinds of great games going on there for you to play, vendors to hang out with, speakers to listen to, guests that you can go see. And we're going to have a pretty large booth there. We're going to have a big presence where we're going to be podcasting throughout the day, doing interviews with cosplayers, having games. We're going to be playing some Mario Kart, probably some Street Fighter video games as well. And competitions, I mean by that, probably just with the Switch 2 though. And we'll have a really good time, I think, and it'll be a lot of fun. And we'll be doing some giveaways from stuff that we find from the vendors when we go out there. And one of the things that I'm really excited about with this specific event is that I've organized it a lot better than the events that I have in the past. I'm doing a lot better with my managing of time skills, not getting overburdened with things, because I've been actively focused on improving my nervous system, or my vagus nerve, as relates to being able to take on stress so that I can continue to work at the capacity that I'm working at. Last week alone, I did about 60 hours. There were times in my life where I did 80 hours a week. I find that the best mechanism to grow and to still still make time for the other things that you enjoy is to work 50 to 55 hours a week. So I worked that this last week. So I want to reduce some of my work this week to keep my rest and my vagus nerve and my nervous system kind of in alignment, or healthy. And that's one of the things that's really helped me kind of maintain a better life. I want to say life balance, but I don't want people to think that we need to strive for a work-life balance. What we need to strive for is a balance in the goals that we want to accomplish and the relationships that we want to build. And that's something that I truly, truly believe in. The U.S. has been considering an idea of special operations to seize Iran's uranium. The strikes on atomic facilities last June complicated the task of tracking the Islamic Republic's stockpile. President Donald Trump is weighing the option of deploying special forces on the ground to seize Iran's near-bomb grade uranium, as officials grow increasingly concerned the stockpile may have been moved. And while we do, from an allies axis standpoint, we don't want our enemies to have uranium. But I don't think that we don't want our enemies to have uranium for the reasons why we think that we don't want our enemies to have uranium, which is to create nuclear weapons. I think that we want to hold off the uranium because uranium is one of the most important resources that's going to be into the future. In fact, I started investing in an ETF, URA. I think it is a Global X Uranium ETF. I've made like 90% return on it since I started investing in it. I'm assuming that if these things continue more, that ETF is going to go high. I haven't checked it today, so I'm not sure if it's dipped or gone down. But uranium is really important for nuclear power generation, which again can create nuclear weapons. Okay, but more important, the primary use of uranium is in nuclear power plants. And so uranium atoms are split in a process called nuclear fission. This releases a large amount of heat. The heat produces steam that spins turbines to generate electricity. And I think that there's fission, and then there's a thing called fusion that we're trying to get to, which has less waste, if I'm not mistaken, and can be a maybe a cleaner source. Again, I'm not an expert on it, but the way that I look at it is that we are going to be going into a world where we need to find longer sustainable forms of electricity and energy. And one of those main forms is through uranium and nuclear power. Now, the other reason why people do it is for nuclear weapons, but or try to get uranium. But I think that what we're really trying to do is we need to have the resources in the United States. And I'm saying that this is right or wrong. This isn't an ethical judgment or a moral judgment. Is that the United States, I believe, is trying to get the uranium so that we can make sure that we hold that power, not only from a nuclear power, like a nuclear weapon standpoint, but also from a nuclear energy standpoint. The country and the scientists and the people that can create a cleaner source of nuclear energy, move more to clean nuclear energy, sustainable nuclear energy, that is going to be so important for us to become a multiplanetary species, for us to become a less consumption of electricity species. It's probably, in my opinion, but I don't know this for a fact, the way that I think about it is that it's cleaner than the other ways in which we're getting electricity now, as long as we can get rid of the waste component of nuclear energy. Okay. And so again, I think that this is a tactic, in my opinion, for us to go into Iran, get uranium because it's one of the most important resources. And then we have that access to it, but we're using it as a way to say, look, they have uranium and they're going to be using it to make weapons. That's always been the narrative since I've been a child as it relates to Iran. My opinion is that they have nuclear weapons. They're getting close to nuclear weapons. And in my opinion, if they have good scientists, they would have already been there. But again, I don't know all of the details because I don't study this on a regular basis. The other things that uranium can do is naval nuclear reactors. So submarines and aircraft carriers use nuclear reactors fueled by uranium. This allows them to operate for years without refueling. Again, energy source, right? And so nuclear power is in my opinion, based off of the limited knowledge that I have on it, is the most important energy source that we can have in the world, and we need to do a better job with it. And I think that that's where we're coming down to. There's also medical isotopes. Uranium can help produce radioisotopes used in medicine, including cancer treatment, diagnostic imaging, sterilization of medical equipment. It can also be used in inspecting welds and pipelines, measuring thickness of materials, sterilizing equipment, and then it's used in all other kinds of scientific research. Now, the U.S. and Israel struck key nuclear facilities during last June's war, and uncertainty over Iran's highly enriched uranium has intensified because it's almost 9 months since United Nations atomic inspectors last verified its location. The U.S. and Israel officials are actively searching for the highly enriched material and have contingency plans that include deploying special forces at its locations is confirmed. Now, again, I'm not saying that there's not a possibility that the Iranians want to utilize the nuclear energy for the purposes of weapons. However, I also think that they might want to also use the use of the nuclear energy for better power sources to expand and improve their infrastructure. Okay. And so again, the way that I'm thinking of this and the way that I want other people to think about it is that even if this is about nuclear weapons specifically and not about nuclear energy as a whole, extracting that uranium, the truth of the matter is that rare earth minerals and uranium and other rare earth minerals are going to be key things that we need to be investing in, that you need to be investing in moving forward. And that's more of the reason why I'm bringing this to everybody's attention. Not to say that Trump's a dick. We all know that I think that Trump's a fucking piece of shit. And I don't think that he's leading us in the right way. I don't think that he's, chosen by God in any stretch of the imagination to lead us. And even if God did choose him and that was the person that God chose, I would not want to have anything to do with that God. That makes that God kind of a piece of shit. And so that's my opinion. I hope that maybe offended you. And if it did offend you, good. All gods aside, go and research rare earth minerals. I can't think of all of them. One of them, silicon. Which goes into our cell phones, and there's many other ones that go into things that we're going to need for the space race, and things that we're going to need to probably to create the facilities to house the nuclear energy. And I feel that those are going to be the two most important things, along with copper. Copper goes into the space race as well. So if you're thinking about things to invest in, research rare earth minerals, research uranium, and research copper. They are going to be so important for the future of our civilization and our civilization in the stars. Back in 2020. It's been 6 years essentially that I've just been working in this office in my house. I hardly ever clean it. You guys can see a look at on Mercury. I should be ashamed of myself, and I am ashamed of myself. In fact, I think more people should be ashamed of themselves and how they appear to the world than this new narrative that we are pushing in society, that we shouldn't give a fuck what other people think about us. I think that we should give a fuck about what other people think about us. I think that we should give a fuck what our family thinks about us. I think we should give a fuck what our friends think about us. I think we should give a fuck what our neighbors think about us. I don't think that we necessarily need to keep up with the Joneses per se and have the same things that those people think and the people that look down on people in a pretentious way. But we should want our neighbors and our community to think that we're good people, to think that we're clean people, to think that we're people that are helping move society forward. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this and not diving deep into literature about it yet, from Aristotle and from Confucian, that believe that etiquette and manners and how we react in society and how we act in society needs to be better. I've also been watching a lot of Frasier, and so sometimes when I watch a lot of Frasier, I want to do Frasier-y things because those are the things that I enjoy. But the problem is I've been locked up in my house for 6 years, and so I haven't really given a shit about what I look like, because I'm not going outside. I hardly ever clean this room. And I think that, that was one of the things that kind of messed up mine and Danielle's relationship, who is my partner, who we're in the process of separating and going through a divorce. And now I'm seeing another person. Her name's Maria. And, not that she's judging me in these specific things, because again, when you care about people, you try not to judge them and you try to love them for who they are. But there are things that people should be looking at each other and wanting to do better for for the other person, right? And I might be old school, but I don't think women should open their doors. I think that women shouldn't buy things. They shouldn't pay for things. They can give gifts for men and things like that. That's just being kind. But at the same time, I also think that how, our home looks and how we organize things, those are things that we should, that are impactful, that create good habits for us, that can create these other habits that make us more meaningful in the interactions that we have with other people. And that's kind of what Aristotle and Confucius think about, think of. And so it's made me been doing a lot of thinking about my specific personal image brand. I listened to a book that I talked about on the last podcast, What Leaders Learn, or How Leaders Learn. And in it, when David Novak was asked when he became the CEO of Yum, he went through personal image training. There's a personal image coach or a brand image coach. And that helped him to look at how he was perceived in the media, how he was perceived in the public. And while I don't think that we should forego who we are and we should still stay true to ourselves, I think it warrants us introspectively looking at how we are and what we're doing and how we're presenting ourselves in the world and how we act as something that could be important. And there is a philosopher, and I can't remember his name, and I didn't do the research before this, so I don't know, tell me I'm a shitty podcaster. I don't care. And that believes that there's a problem with this authenticity mindset that we have moving forward in the world. In fact, David Novak mentioned it in his book as well, How Leaders Learn. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about brand image. I'm going to talk a little bit about changing for your environment, like changing, and which has to do with what's happening for me this week. And then some of the problems with being overly authentic and not being philosophical and not searching for wisdom and not searching for how to be etiquette in society. And as I ponder about my life and some of the ways that I act and some of the things that I say in public, I should probably be doing a better job. And it always reminds me that, our parents, maybe aren't right in like everything because they're doing, some of us get better educations than our parents. Some of us, think that we know more than our parents. Some of us put, their love for God over their love for their parents, which has always been odd for me, or weird for me, in my opinion. But sometimes they do have good insight on overall life and getting older and aging and seeing the thing and that type of wisdom. And, when I think about things that I should have listened to my mother about or my grandfather about, there are things that I wish that I would do because people could see me better. They could see me differently, see me nicer, and they could look at me as a different perception. And I think that is important. And I really want to personally get back to that. Even if that means changing certain things about myself, changing certain roles that I have, changing certain things that I'm doing in the world, because, for me, making money is fun, and making money for me is important. And I'm very grateful because of the people that I'm around that are the ones that have really also sacrificed to help me make money. But the reason why I want money isn't necessarily just for generational wealth. I want to leave this world much better, from at least Arizona, because I love Arizona so much. And there, there's other states that I love, but I do love Arizona because, I've lived here most of my life, and people might judge me and say, well, you haven't lived anywhere else, but whatever. Arizona's great. And so, for me, money's important, but also too, knowing that I'm going to be doing more public facing stuff, I really have to get my shit together as it relates to how do I really want to be perceived, and how could I do a better job now of how I'm being perceived and how I'm acting and what I'm doing. And so when we think about brand image, it's not, your logo, it's the feeling people get when they think of your name. And that's one of the things that I really want to change. I don't want people, I get very frustrated and I get very loud, and I don't want that to be the thing that people think of me about. I really want people to think of me as someone who has a really good work ethic, can work harder than other people, who's very compassionate, who is very serene, right? That can bring calmness when they think of me. And I don't think that I've done a strong enough job portraying that. And I think that you should think about how you want people to portray you as well also. Consistency is the most underrated brand building tool. People trust what they see repeatedly. And one of the things being borderline personality disorder is sometimes it's very difficult for me to be able to go back and forth. And it's very difficult for me to stay consistent because, I'm driven by emotions for the mere fact that my emotions are much more elaborate and escalated than other people. And that's something that I want to continue to work on, because I want people to see me as a level-headed person that's not all over the place. And it's difficult to not be all over the place when I lose control of my emotions because of having a mental disorder that causes those emotionals to be a little bit out of whack. And then the other thing is looking more at the content. I've been looking at my Age of Jeremy content. I've been looking at the content that I share. Sometimes the stories that I put out are a little bit erratic, a little bit frustrating because of my political views and my religious views. I think that are a little bit different than most people. And I think that we're headed in the wrong place. So I put things that might not always align with the message that I'm trying to portray on social media. Because every piece of content that you post it's either going to be either reinforcing to your brand or it's going to be eroding to your brand. And we have to think about those things when we're actually going out there and posting them. And that's something that I need to look at better. Your brand is also built in public. You don't really control it, you influence it, which leads me to a little bit about this week. This week I'm going to a nationwide conference because there's some real internal goals that I have from a business perspective. So this year I want to really focus on being really good at insurance and integrating that into Q Financial, along with being able to do taxes and other people being able to do taxes and building that specific brand. I also want to get into other types of insurance and build an insurance firm, because insurance to me is not only really important for people, it also is something that I believe in from a hedging of a risk perspective. And I want to have more conversations from that from a financial perspective. So for Q Financial, growing that is really just in insurance and taxes this year, and the bookkeeping aspect of it. Like, I really want to go in, figure out how to really grow that. I started a little bit of it last year. I brought in 2 bookkeepers this year, and I'm really continuing to expound upon that. And as part of that, it's getting that name out in public and also getting me out in public associated with that specific brand and as a venture capitalist and as an entrepreneur and so forth. And with that being said, the way that I want people to see me in public, I don't want them to see me as really a slob that wears jeans. I always make this joke that whenever we go somewhere, we always look homeless, even though we're wealthy. And that's fine. You don't have to look a certain way to be wealthy, and you don't have to be wealthy to look a certain way. But again, I don't think that influence in the world, I think that influence of how we are and how we act as it relates to etiquette and manners is something that I've been thinking a lot more about as I ponder on philosophy, especially as it relates to things like Aristotle, like I mentioned in Confucianism, which a lot of their etiquette and manners and how people act in the world were the things that were designed to create a really good community. And because selflessness is what is needed to create a really strong community, we have to look at it from the fact that we should kind of care about the things that are out in the world and how we're being perceived and how we're acting out in the world, because those are the things that kind of create what the community and the world look like, and how the world and how people see the community that you're specifically in. And that's really important. And that's even really important, as part of a Sangha and being a Buddhist as well. And the gap between how you see yourself and how the world sees you is the work that you need to put in, right? How you want the world to see you and how you see yourself. You want those things to be, in my opinion, you want those things to be integral. So you want those things to be the same. I don't want the world to see me as someone who wears like old t-shirts that he's had for years. I don't want the world to see me as someone who doesn't have a nice garden out front. I don't want the world to see me as someone who doesn't have nice trees and bushes for my tortoises. I don't want the world to see me as someone who's always yelling and all over the place. And I think that we have come in society to think that it's okay to be however we want because we shouldn't give a fuck what other people think about us. And I'm starting to think that might be wrong. And I think my assessment from an social anthropological assessment is that we're going to be going into a world where that's going to flip and that's going to change, because we've allowed ourselves to become so undisciplined and so ridiculous in the things that we believe, and ridiculous in the things that we say, and ridiculous in the things that we do. And strong brand image equals people already know what you stand for before you say a word. Most people don't have a brand problem, they have a clarity problem, and that's where I'm at. Ask yourself, if someone described you to a stranger, what 3 words would they use? Are those the 3 words that you specifically want? I want people to realize that I'm compassionate, I want them to think that I'm very peaceful, and I want them to think that I put others above myself. So you want to also kind of change for your environment. Russell Simmons, the founder of Def Jam, he always used to wear jumpsuits everywhere. And a lot of people said, should people just wear whatever they want? He said, no, I get to wear whatever I want because I'm in charge. But what you want to do is you want to dress the way that's expected of you in the environment in which you're in. And this is coming from someone who, I don't know, at least a multimillionaire. I doubt he was close to being a billionaire, but I don't know. And so code switching isn't really fake. Code switching is really intelligent. The boardroom and the barbershop are not the same room. You need to be in the environment in which you are in, and you can still be integral in the things that you believe based off of the situation. I don't act the same way, or I don't want to act the same way. I guess I kind of did. I don't want to act the same way that I do in a fancy restaurant that I do at Taco Bell. Or I do want to act the same way, and I want that way to be the way that I would act in a fancy restaurant as opposed to being in the Taco Bell, which, as you guys all know, I love me some Taco Bell. You're not really changing who you are. You're really changing how you show up in the situation, right? So like a surgeon's going to talk differently to a patient than to a colleague. And that's not being two-faced. That's being skilled in what you're doing and knowing the room in which and the people that you're talking to. It's like the same thing in which you educate people. You educate people based off of their knowledge base or where they're specifically at in what it is that you're teaching them or talking to them about. Right? Like you're going to talk to 5-year-olds differently than you're going to talk to adults unless those adults have a 5-year-old education, which is what we're starting to see inside of our society, which is very frustrating and sad. But that is what it is. And that's what I'm trying to change, at least about the people that I'm around. The core values travel with you. Your delivery adapts to the room that you are in, right? So you or me, I have values. Those values don't change. We stay integral to those values and the things that we believe in and our principles. But how we deliver those things are different based off of who we are and how we appear to the people that are in that specific room. Reading the room is a skill most people never develop, and it costs them. So the version of you on a podcast should be different from the version of you inside of a negotiation, right? The way that I'm talking to everybody on this podcast, they're going to be different than when I'm actually negotiating and having a serious conversation. And I think that this is one of the skills that we as a society are pushing away because of this push towards just being authentically ourselves. And I think that there's a flaw in that. Rigidity is not integrity. Being rigid and not being able to waver is not integral, right? Knowing when to adjust to the emotional intelligence of what you're trying to do, that's the integral thing that we really need to be focused on. Elite communications doesn't have one style. It has a range of communications. And so when I communicate to my chief operating officer, my chief investment officer, or my chief executive officer, or as I go and I build my nonprofit life and my board life, as I'm going to start building here soon, the conversations that I have in those are going to be different. It's not that I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to dress like this, or I'm not going to do that, because we think that that's going away from who we are. I think that we're going to lose out on opportunities. Everybody is, if you have that mindset. And just, one of the biggest things that is happening, and I hear it all on social media, just be authentic. It's really like a lazy advice in self-development, right? You can be authentically an asshole and never realize that you're a fucking asshole, and maybe you should tone down being an asshole, right? Authenticity without self-awareness is just an excuse to be unfiltered. And unfiltered is not always really useful. Some people use being real or being who they are as a shield to actually avoid the growth of who they should be becoming, right? And that, I think, is something that I did sometimes over these last couple of years, is that, this is who I am. I'm a workaholic. I'm going to work. I'm not going to change for anybody. I'm not going to make assessments. I know what I'm doing. I'm building so much money. I have wealth, yada, yada, yada. And then the wealth that you have, right? There's always going to be people that have more money than you, right? I mean, Elon Musk switches between the second to the wealthiest. Someone will eventually come along and take on his money. Money doesn't fucking matter, right? Money matters to the extent that we utilize it to create the things that we want in the world. That's the reason why it matters. There's only a certain amount of money that people need to find their contentment in life. And then everything over that should be utilized to build the world that they want and to help the people that are around them. That's my opinion. The other problem with authenticity is authentic to what? When we talk about, and I've been thinking about that, authentic, what am I being authentic to? I change sometimes. I change a lot of the times. I have a conversation with someone and it changes my mind because like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. I should probably not do that, right? So again, authenticity traps us. It traps us into this performance to be authentic just as much as they perform on anything else. So authenticity becomes a performance metric of what we're trying to show people out inside of the world. And authenticity doesn't mean us just being unfiltered and us being kind of a dick to people. It more means continuing to be who you are in a way in which you can communicate to different types of people based off of their understanding and their intelligence and their education. Vulnerability that gets calculated applause isn't vulnerability. It's a content strategy. Real authenticity is showing up consistently even when the camera is off, right? So when I give money or I go and volunteer, I do that or try to do that. And again, this isn't like a virtual signaling thing or like trying to show myself. Oh, that's not the point of this. The point is that we do the good things in darkness that we do in the light. And the more that we can do that, the better real version of ourselves we're going to be all the time. And that's real authenticity. The goal is about being integral. And integrity means your actions match your values, not just the mood that you're specifically in on that specifically day. If you're fired up or if you're depressed or if you're whatever, right? Like if I feel something about a certain topic and then I'm going to go and rant about that specific topic when I've never really talked about that topic, that's not really being integral. That's just something driving your emotions. And then you're going out there and yelling about it. So again, the key is to find what your principles are, to be integral, and then continue to work and better yourself so that you can be that person in the different situations that come to you within life. We should be working on ourselves more and harder on anything else in the world. And we should also be improving our wisdom and our knowledge and our skill sets, right? If you know the same software that you knew 10 years ago, you need to upskill. If you have not practiced a new form of philosophy, you need to go read more philosophy. If you have not read a fictional book, go and read a fictional book. You should have tried more hobbies every single year than the year before. You should have read more nonfiction and fiction books than you did the year before. In my opinion, you should know more games. You should know more, trying more languages. You're not going to become an expert polyglot overnight, right? If one of the things that I think about myself, and I want people to remember this, and I don't mean this in a jab on anybody else. I never want to be the type of person that asks someone to do something because I can't do it or don't want to learn how to do it, if that makes sense. Like, for example, I am doing everything that I can to understand graphic design, UX design, so that I can understand that, so that then I can help another UX designer build the things that I want to build and learn the development, right? When I don't know how to do something in a software, I want to know and do that. Doesn't mean that I'm the one that has to do it all of the time. It just means that I have an understanding of it. And if I need to, I can go and do the actual thing that needs to be done, right? I think sometimes, and this is my opinion, I feel sometimes that we get so caught up in believing that we need to have other people do everything for us that it stops us still from having a good understanding and learning those key areas that we need to do to grow ourselves and to be better leaders and to be better people and to be better entrepreneurs. So if you're interested in leaving me a comment on any of this, please do it on my YouTube. You can check it out at Age of Jeremy. You could be hearing this on YouTube. You can actually get this podcast wherever you're getting it because you're listening to it now. But go to my Instagram, drop me a message. Go to my X at Age of Jeremy. Drop me a message. Let me know what you think. You can also join my my broadcast channel, Dope Insights and Updates. I'm working on a strategy for that moving forward. I never give up on anything. I just keep sucking at it and then trying to get better at it. And that's one of the things that I've been looking at my life and thinking how I can get better at those things that I keep saying that I'm getting better at and still sucking at. And again, in no way am I perfect. I'm just thinking that as I'm growing these businesses and starting even more businesses and putting myself out there, it's time to kind of maybe grow up a little bit in some of the things that I thought about life. And I think that some of those things might have just been because I am afraid of getting older and afraid of not accomplishing the things that I want and not having done the things that I wish that I had done. And have been thinking about some of those things that I regret. But other than that, I appreciate each and every one of you. And as I always say, be thankful, grateful, and kind. We'll talk with you next time. Bye.
Hard to believe you are real. Tell me, how does it feel? Tell me, how does it feel? I see the meaning of life in your eyes. It's like swimming in the ocean at night. And when I'm with you, it's like I'm on fire. Nothing is real outside myself and your smile lines. Bring me down with sweet soft sound. My name, the way it sparkles when it leaves your mouth. Fill my soul with you.